Welcome to Your Dose of Wowness. I'm your host, and today, for day 39, we are sailing straight into the heart of a legend. A place on the map where compasses supposedly spin out of control, where the sky and sea swallow secrets whole. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. We're going deep into the Bermuda Triangle.
1 minute, a plane is on the radar, flying through a clear blue sky. The next, it's just gone.
A massive cargo ship, sailing on a perfectly calm sea. One moment, it's there. Then, just static. No debris, no distress call, and for decades, absolutely no answers.
You know the name, right? The Bermuda Triangle. It's almost more of an idea than a place on a map. It's become this piece of our collective imagination, a corner of the world where the rules of physics just seem to give up.
And you've heard the stories. I mean, we all have. Compasses spinning wildly out of control, radios crackling and then just going dead. Instruments that worked perfectly a second ago suddenly failing. And the big one, entire ships and airplanes just disappearing. Not crashing, not sinking in a storm, just poof, erased. No wreckage, no oil slick, no bodies, nothing.
So for years, the explanations got pretty wild. Alien abductions, vortexes to other dimensions, lost cities of Atlantis, sucking things down. But what if the real truth is actually stranger? What if the real monsters hiding in this stretch of water aren't supernatural at all, but are forces of nature so powerful and so bizarre, we're only just starting to wrap our heads around them?
Okay, let's start with the one that kicked it all off. December 5th, 1945. 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers, 14 men. What was supposed to be a completely routine 2-hour training flight that would end up becoming the founding myth of the Bermuda Triangle.
This is the quote you always hear. A terrified pilot, his instruments going haywire, flying over some alien-looking ocean, lost not just in space but maybe in reality itself. It's an incredible, chilling moment, and you should know it's almost entirely made up.
All right, let's pull this apart. Myth versus reality. The legend says they disappeared in crystal clear skies. The actual U.S. Navy weather reports for that day show they flew head-on into a violent, fast-forming storm that was churning up the ocean below. The myth paints a picture of ace pilots totally baffled by strange forces. The record? The flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, was actually new to that part of Florida. He had a documented history of getting lost in the air, and he calmly reported that he thought both of his compasses were broken. And that rescue plane that also got swallowed by the triangle? Well, it was a PBM Mariner, a model with a very grim nickname, the Flying Gas Tank. Why? Because it was known for fuel vapors building up and exploding. A ship nearby actually saw it blow up in a massive fireball just seconds after it took off.
When you just look at the actual timeline, the supernatural stuff completely dissolves, and what you're left with is a heartbreaking human tragedy. At 3:45, Taylor calmly says he's lost. But then, by 4:30, his own student pilots, using their own perfectly good instruments, figure out his huge mistake. You can literally hear them on the radio recordings begging him to fly west, back to land. But Taylor, convinced he's over the Gulf of Mexico, overrules them and leads them northeast, flying them deeper and deeper into the empty, hostile Atlantic. By 5:50, that monster storm hits them with 50-foot waves, and at 6:20, they run out of fuel. There's no mystery here. It's a tragedy of disorientation, followed by a terrible chain of human errors, all of it colliding with an unforgiving sea.
Now for the other pillar of the whole legend, the USS Cyclops. This was a monster of a ship, a 542-foot Navy collier. In March of 1918, it set sail from Barbados with 306 people on board and it was never seen or heard from again.
And this is how the story always gets told, right? 1 second, this huge naval ship is sailing peacefully across a flat, calm sea. The next, it has simply ceased to be. No distress call, no debris, no survivors. It's as if a hole just opened up in the ocean and swallowed it whole.
But again, the official naval record tells a much different, much grimmer story. The myth says calm waters. Reality is it sailed directly into what sailors at the time called a violet storm. The myth says it was a state-of-the-art vessel. The record shows it had a known structural crack in its hull and one of its 2 engines was broken, which severely limited its ability to fight the waves. And maybe most important of all, it was dangerously overloaded. It was carrying 10,800 tons of super-dense manganese ore way over its limit, which made it incredibly top-heavy and unstable. The most likely scenario? A huge wave hit it on its side, it rolled, and it went down so fast that sending an SOS was physically impossible.
Okay, so if it's not aliens and it's not time warps, what's really going on in the triangle? We've been so busy looking for monsters from science fiction that we missed the real ones. And it turns out the monsters from physics are way, way more terrifying.
First up, the rogue wave. You know, for centuries, sailors told stories about these things, and scientists just dismissed them as tall tales. Then, in 1995, an oil rig in the North Sea actually measured one with lasers. Oh, they are very real. And these are not tsunamis. They're single vertical walls of water that just erupt out of the ocean, sometimes even on perfectly calm days.
100 feet. Just try to picture that. A 10-story building made of solid water, rising up from a flat sea and just collapsing on top of your ship. There is nothing humans build that can withstand that kind of force. A ship hit by one doesn't just sink, it's annihilated in an instant.
Killer number 2 is the perfect accomplice, the Gulf Stream. Think of it like a 50-mile wide river flowing right through the middle of the Atlantic. It's so powerful it can create its own violent, unpredictable weather systems in minutes. But more importantly, it's the ultimate evidence eraser. If a plane or a ship goes down, this current acts like a giant conveyor belt, grabbing the wreckage and scattering it over thousands of square miles in just a few hours. Finding anything becomes almost impossible.
And then you have what is maybe the strangest and most terrifyingly real scenario of them all, a methane eruption. The seafloor in this region is loaded with frozen methane gas. All it takes is a small underwater landslide to break a chunk of it free. A massive bubble of gas erupts toward the surface. As it rises, it turns the dense ocean water into a frothy, bubbly foam. Now, imagine you're a ship sailing right over that spot. The water beneath you suddenly loses all its density. It can't support your weight anymore. You would drop like a rock, plunging straight to the bottom in seconds. No time to even realize what's happening, let alone send an SOS. You would just be gone.
So even with all these very real, natural killers, the legend still says that this one spot on Earth is a unique magnet for disaster. So finally, investigators decided to do something really simple. They just ignored the spooky stories and counted.
The big question is, once you strip away the hype, is this piece of ocean statistically more dangerous than any other busy shipping lane that also happens to get a lot of storms?
Well, the numbers couldn't be clearer. When you factor in the sheer volume of ship and plane traffic, plus the frequency of hurricanes and tropical storms, the rate of accidents in the Bermuda Triangle is statistically identical to other busy, stormy parts of the world, like the South China Sea or the North Sea. There's no spike, there's no anomaly. The so-called deadly triangle is, statistically speaking, completely and utterly normal. And what about the people who are actually out there every single day patrolling these waters? The U.S. Coast Guard's official statement is about as blunt as it gets. They say, quote, "The U.S. Coast Guard does not recognize the existence of the so-called Bermuda Triangle. We have not found anything that would indicate that casualties were the result of anything other than physical causes." For them, the case is closed. There's no mystery to solve.
So, if the triangle isn't really a place on a map, if there are no time warps or sea monsters, just rogue waves, methane burps, and the Gulf Stream, then why? Why do we cling so tightly to the myth? Why do we want the monsters to be real?
Maybe it's because the truth is just too ordinary, too random. The idea that an experienced pilot can just get lost and run out of gas, or that a huge ship can just tip over because someone loaded it improperly, it's almost boring, it's just chaos. But a monster, a mystery, well, that feels like an answer. It gives a terrible, meaningless event a sense of purpose. And maybe the story of the Bermuda Triangle tells us a lot less about a weird patch of water, and a whole lot more about our own deep, human need to find order in the chaos.
Thank you for being here with us today. Every day, we try to go deeper than the headline. Tomorrow is day 40, and we are headed to Africa to puzzle over the incredible fairy circles of Namibia. We'll see you then.